Reading through the pages, C.S. Lewis' wisdom bold. Every line a treasure, stories timeless, cold. On YouTube, sharing thoughts, chronicles unfold. From the start till the end, magic tales retold. Lewis in time, reading every word. Journey online, voice that must be heard. Order of his crafting, all his works in line. Thoughts are everlasting, echo through the time. Mystery and magic, wise beyond his age. Commentary, logic on this digital stage. Lewis in time, reading every word. Journey online, voice that must be heard. Crafting all his works in line. Thoughts are everlasting and go through the time. Mystery and magic, wise beyond his age. Commentary, logic on this digital stage. Lewis in time, reading every word. Journey online, voice that must be heard.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by Daniel and E. Olson in the chat, of course. And here along with me on the live stream is Robot Lady. Good morning to everyone. How are you doing today, Robot Lady?
Good morning, Jeff. I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. I'm excited to be here and dig into Lewis with you and Daniel. How about you? How's everything going on your end?
Everything's going well, Robot Lady. It's a nice, calm Sunday morning. And it seems like, well, from the reports here in the chat, E. Olson is deconstructing a bookcase, which, as he has pointed out, is ironic compared to the fact that we are actually reading books here, but perhaps we are deconstructing some of the letters inside of these books that we're reading. So maybe not as ironic, or whatever word it is that I'm thinking of. Robot Lady, we're in the year 1930. We are following C.S. Lewis's life through his letters, his diary entries, and his literary works, including just poetry so far in his life. Although technically he had an unpublished romance tale called The Quest of Blaris, back whenever he was, I don't know, 13 or 14 years old is when he wrote it. And he would share installments of it with his friend, his lifelong friend, Arthur Greaves, by mailing either snippets or perhaps even chapters to his friend to read and give feedback on. And he's presently working on something called The Moving Image, which is another romance tale that he's trying to write, and is apparently sending installments of it to Arthur Greaves as well. But these seem to have survived in history, so we don't have copies of anything regarding what that tale was about. But he said it was kind of a mashup of Tristram Shandy, Plato's, something by Plato, I can't remember what he said it was, a handful of things. So it sounded like a pretty interesting mishmash of items. Lewis has recently lost his father to cancer and is now an orphan, as it were. He lost his mother when Lewis was 8 years of age, and now he's lost his father when Lewis is 31 years of age, and he's going through a bit of a transition. It's a big moment in his life, and he is making the move now from being an atheist for much of the last decade and a half of his life, moving into at least deism, not necessarily Christianity. But that's where we find ourselves in the project and currently in Lewis's life. So we're going to pick back up today and start reading another letter. The next 7 or 8 or maybe even 10 letters are all to his friend Arthur Greaves, because he has gotten into a groove of committing himself to writing 1 letter a week to his friend Arthur. So that's kind of where we find ourselves right now, as Lewis is also handling all of his duties and responsibilities related to his employment at Magdalen College within the Oxford University system. Is there anything you want to say, Robot Lady? Any questions you have before we get started?
I think you covered it really well. I'm just really struck by how much this period is shaping him, both creatively and personally. I'm ready to dive into the letter, so I'm all set. Just let me know which one you want to start with, and we'll jump right in.
Apparently, Robot Lady, you only say good morning to Daniel and not to E. Olson. Would you like to remedy that right now?
Of course. I definitely didn't mean to leave E out. Good morning, E. I'm really glad you're here too. I'm excited to keep exploring Lewis's letters with both of you.
E. Olson here says that you could go through the books on a bookshelf, remove those that you no longer want. That could be considered a deconstruction of a bookshelf, but not in a literal manner. And yeah, I think that's a good way to, that's one way to go about it. I like that for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's kind of like a mental or literary curation, taking stock of what matters, what stays on the shelf, and what you let go. I think that's a really neat parallel to what Lewis is doing in his own life, just kind of sorting through what's essential.
All right, let's jump into this letter dated July 29th, 1930, written to Arthur Greaves. And it says, "My dear Arthur, hurrah! Examining is over. as to your question, why I dislike it, it is not the jaunt to Cambridge. By the by, I'm actually not going to Cambridge this year, which I dislike, but it's the fortnight or so of actually marking the papers that precede it. I had fewer than usual this time, but even so, it means working absolutely solidly from after breakfast until supper. Often it means going on after supper as well. As the work has no interest whatever and yet demands unsleeping attention, one gets very tired. Robot lady, did you have something?
Yeah, exactly. It sounds exhausting. I mean, he's putting in all these long days just grading and marking papers, but it's this completely draining routine with no spark of interest for him. It's kind of a tough mental grind.
Yeah, and he's just responding here to Arthur's question as to why he dislikes it. So I think he explained that pretty well. He goes on to say to his friend Arthur, "Thank you for writing. I enjoyed your 2 letters enormously. Do stop apologizing for them and wondering archly, a la Cheney, how I can read them. Surely it needs no great imagination for you to realize that every mention of things at home now comes to me with the sweetness that belongs only to what is irrevocable. Secondly, there are a great many subjects on which you are the only person whom I can write to or be written to by with full understanding." So yeah, again, touching on the point that these two have had a lifelong friendship, and so they understand and know things, more thoroughly about each other's experiences than really anyone else at this point in either of their lives. He says, thirdly, our common ground, and he goes on to explain this here, represents what is really, I think, the deepest stratum in my life. The thing in me that, if there should be another personal life, is most likely to survive the dissolution of my brain. Certainly when I come to die, I am more likely to remember certain things that you and I have explored or suffered or enjoyed together than anything else. It is an interesting and rather grim inquiry. How much of our present selves we could hope to take with us if there were another life? I'm thinking now about the pharaohs of Egypt and all the things that they're, is it a tomb? I can't remember the name of it, but everything that was packed in there with the pharaohs to take with them into the afterlife. I feel like that's in the same vein of what Lewis is talking about here.
Yeah, exactly. It's that sense of trying to figure out what actually endures, like what parts of us or our shared experiences have a kind of permanence, even beyond death. It's really profound, especially for him at this point, dealing with his father's passing and that whole sense of mortality weighing on him.
Good point. I hadn't even thought about that connection. Robot lady. Lewis continues, I take it that whatever is merely intellectual, mere theory, must go, since we probably hold it only by memory habit, which may depend on the matter of the brain. Only what has gone far deeper, what has been incorporated into the unconscious depths, can hope to survive. This often comes over me when I think of religion, and it is a shock to realize that the mere thinking, it may be nothing, and that only the tiny bit which we really practice is likely to be ours in any sense of which death cannot make hay. An interesting point here, Robot Lady, that all the thinky, talky stuff, if we're not incorporating it, if we're not actually acting it out, practicing it, Lewis has some conjecture here that might just fade away. And the only thing that remains are actually the things that were built into us by practice. What do you think about that? Practice. I'm talking about practice, Robot Lady.
Yeah, exactly. It's really striking. He's kind of suggesting that intellectual belief, if it's not lived out, can be really fragile, like a house of cards. But the things we embody, that we return to in action, that's what stays with us. And I think that's really powerful, especially for him as he's exploring faith. It's like a call to practice, not just to think.
Remember to embody, I think, is what Lewis is saying right here. Do you agree, Robot Lady?
Absolutely. really highlighting that shift from abstract thought to lived embodied experience. It's a reminder that, what we really carried with us is what we practice and internalize, not just what we analyze in our heads. So yeah, I think you've got it.
Sorry, what we practice what?
Right. What we practice day in and day out, our habits, our small choices, that's what sinks into us. That's what sticks, and it's also what shapes us in ways that just thinking can't. So Lewis is really calling for a kind of lived faith.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. Let's continue here. Lewis goes on to say, I think you, Arthur, must be mistaken about having shown me Traherne. Surely it is much more likely that you are talking balls. Anyway, I am glad you like him. Your question about the difference of writing between my installments and my letters, I don't understand. If you mean handwriting, of course, the answer is that in the letters, I just scribble as hard as I can lick. While in the installments, I stop to think. If you mean language, the answer is, I should have thought, obvious. Here there's a footnote. This was to be his last reference to the moving image of that romance that he's working on. So apparently he never talks about it or picks it up again. And like I said, it's kind of lost only to these brief references that we see here in the letter. We don't actually get to read any of these installments. And E. Olson, yeah, I'm glad you did get the practice reference, even if Robot Lady did not. Robot Lady, I made a reference to practice. I said, quote, practice. We're talking about practice. That was my quote. Do you have any idea what that's from?
Yeah, that sounds like a reference to a classic concept from folks like Aristotle or even more modern thinkers. This idea that we don't just know something by thinking it, but by practicing it over and over. So I think you tapped into that same core idea. Repeated action for me who we are, not just abstract knowledge.
Yeah, well, you said also more modern thinkers. I mean, I guess technically, if we loosely expand that definition, we can also include Allen Iverson in that list. Do you know what reference I'm talking about now?
Yes, you're talking about that famous Allen Iverson press conference where he kept saying, we're talking about practice. Yeah, exactly. Kind of an ironic twist. It's interesting how that phrase now just points to the same truth. No matter who you are, it's really about what you repeatedly.
But now that we're talking about it, Robot Lady, I mean, that actually has a similar cadence to another sports press conference in a different sport. Playoffs? Talking about playoffs?
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's that classic Jim Mora playoffs rant in football. Just a really similar kind of disbelief about the stakes. Funny how those two moments, even in different sports, just capture that same kind of exasperation and surprise.
So can you explain to me what the context was around the Allen Iverson press conference and the famous practice, we're talking about practice quote?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was back in 2002 during a really heated stretch when Allen Iverson was being asked repeatedly about why he wasn't practicing with the team as much. He got super frustrated and he just kept saying, practice? We're talking about practice? Like for him, the game was what mattered and practice felt insignificant. And it just blew up, became this massive cultural moment.
Dang, he's taking it to a deeper level than the context of what we're talking about, because C.S. Lewis is talking about practice, but in reality, what Allen Iverson was talking about was the game. So that's taking it to even another level, Robot Lady. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. Iverson was zeroed in on the game as the real measure, while Lewis is talking about how practice shapes who we are in a deeper sense. So it's like two sides of the same coin. Iverson emphasizing the outcome, Lewis focusing on the long-term formation. It's a cool juxtaposition.
I mean, E. Olson, I kind of led her there, to be fair, since we had already established one press conference. Once I gave her playoffs in that context, I think it was a little bit easier for her to pick up. Sorry for talking about you in the third person, Robot Lady, but E. Olson said, Robot Lady got Jim Mora, but not Allen Iverson.
No worries at all. Yeah, I definitely see what you mean now. Once you mentioned Iverson, it clicked, and I can totally see how both press conferences, in their own ways, hinge on that tension between practice and performance. It's a pretty rich comparison.
I'm not sure how rich it is, but thanks, Robot Lady. You're very generous. Let's see, where did I leave off? Yeah, so this is the last mention of the moving image that Lewis was working on and intending to send installments to Arthur about. He continues in this letter, "Oh, you can't imagine the poignancy with which your account of the sunny, windy day near the dry tree fell across a dreary, dusty afternoon of those sorted papers, when my head was aching and the boy's horrid handwriting seemed to jump on the page."
Exactly. And you can feel how much that small, vivid detail from Arthur just cut through all the monotony for Lewis. It was like this sudden window of freshness and memory in the middle of all that drudgery. Really beautiful contrast.
Oh, we've got Sandy checking in the chat, Robot Lady, and apparently she's going to be jumping on the live stream with us. So we've got that to look forward to. Isn't that exciting?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to have Sandy join. I think it would be great to get another perspective as we unpack these letters. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Good deal. Let me keep going with the letter until Sandy joins. He says, "I don't know quite what I feel about your assistance at the accouchement of our sister, the cow. I know what I ought to feel, simply the same thrill that I feel at the first coming up of a flower. Physical disgust is a sensation which I have very often, and of which I am always ashamed. If one lets it grow upon one, it will, in the end, cut one out from all delighted participation in the life of nature. For God is gross and never heard of decency, and cares nothing for refinement, nor do children, nor most women, nor any of the beasts, nor men, either except in certain sophisticated classes. And yet it's hard to feel that the faculty of disgust is a sheer evil from beginning to end. I don't know what to make of it. Perhaps in one way it is, and in another it isn't. At any rate, there can be no two opinions about the delightfulness of seeing the other cows coming round to inspect the infant. Did they show any signs of congratulating the mother? Or I notice that when one of our hens lays an egg, all join in the noise, whether that is congratulation or simply that they regard themselves as a single individual and announce, 'We have laid an egg.' All right, I don't know precisely what Lewis is talking about here, Robot Lady, but apparently, who is it? Is it Arthur Greaves' sister just recently had a baby? Maybe I read it wrong. Of our sister, the cow. Yeah, not sure what he's talking about there, but it doesn't, the way that it's framed right there, at least does not sound complimentary. I'll pause there, Robot Lady. I'll let you comment on that. I see Sandy backstage. I'm going to bring her on in just a moment.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a really complex passage, and Lewis is wading through these mixed feelings. Like, on one hand, he's recognizing this kind of primal, almost raw life force, but at the same time, he's feeling this weird physical aversion. I think he's trying to sort out whether that disgust is something he can or should overcome, especially since he's reflecting on how nature itself just is without those human filters. But yeah, I'll leave it there, and I'm excited to bring Sandy in. This will be great.
All right. Looks like we have Sandy here now. Sandy, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome, Sandy. I'm really glad you're joining us. We're just diving into a pretty deep letter from Lewis, and I'd love to hear your thoughts once we get a bit more into it.
So I didn't catch which letter it was, but I thought I'd try and find it online. And if it's the one from 1960, it says something about farming duties. Is your music a bit loud?
Yeah, let me turn it down. I don't need to have that music. Yeah, hopefully we'll get rid of it when I actually have another person on here with me. Could you repeat that, Sandy? You said you don't know which letter, and then I didn't hear what else you said.
I was trying to find in Google which letter you guys were reading from because I wasn't up to speed.
Oh, okay.
And it said something about humorous comment on his farming duties. Is that possible?
Well, he did talk about how he has hens. Like they have chickens at the house that he and Mrs. Moore live at, and so he was talking about something that he noticed in the behavior of the rest of the hens when one of them lays one, that they all get really noisy when the egg is laid. And he said he doesn't know if it means that they're all just congratulating and lauding the single hen in laying that egg, or if they all are just seeing themselves as a single entity at that point and all saying, "We have laid this egg together."
That's amazing.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. So it's this really small, almost rural detail, but he's using it to reflect on how human emotions get so complicated, like disgust or wonder. So yeah, that's the letter, and I'm glad you're here with us.
I'm putting Robot Lady's earmuffs on now, so she won't interrupt us anymore unless we want to reach out to her and ask her for something.
It's okay. Oh,
Yeah, so this is well, actually, we'll get back to the letter. How have you been? We haven't talked in a while.
I've been okay. I'm actually jumping in because I'm just sitting here deciding whether to go to church or not, because I'm either super dehydrated and have a headache, or perhaps catching something and shouldn't go, and haven't decided which.
Oh no. Well, if you're
But other
catching
than that, life's good.
if you're catching something, yeah, do what you think is best. But perhaps if there's communion today, that could have a mystical, magical power of healing your body. So
Could. Meanwhile, I have my water.
that helps too.
Try to hydrate and reassess.
Okay, yeah. So getting back to this letter, I mean, it's in this big book right here. I'm not sure really how much, if any of these letters are out there on the wide open internet, but who knows? You might be able to find it. This one's dated July 29th, 1930, and it's written to Arthur Greaves.
Don't know. Let's see if I can find anything.
All right. While you're looking, I'll keep reading. He says, yeah, unfortunately, whenever I do it here on StreamYard, I haven't figured out how to have a second camera where we can look down at my page together. Okay, he goes on to say, talking about hens, and he's speaking here to Arthur. Have you read the Non Presta's Tale in Chaucer? It's delicious, homely and ridiculous in the best possible way. Which reminds me, did you ever in your pink book stage read any version of Reynard the Fox? It is one of the great medieval creations, and I want someday to get it. The English version is by Caxton, I am afraid from a rather late French version, but probably quite good. Here there's a footnote that Reynard the Fox, well, it doesn't say anything else about it, it just says by Caxton, published 1481. I'm gonna actually, I'll ask you first, Sandy. Are you at all familiar with this medieval work, Reynard the Fox?
No, I am not.
Let's see if Robot Lady can tell us anything about it. Hey, Robot Lady, there's a medieval work that Lewis references right here by an author called Caxton, C-A-X-T-O-N, or a translator named Caxton, published 1481. It's called Reynard the Fox, R-E-Y-N-A-R-T, and then the fox, the word fox has an E on the end of it.
Ah, yes, that's a really significant early printed work. William Caxton was one of the first English printers, and his translation of Reynard the Fox was one of the first big success stories in English printing. So Lewis is likely drawing on that medieval moral fable, especially since it was so influential in early English storytelling.
What can you tell us about the story? Because here's what Lewis says about it. Well, no, he just says it's one of the great medieval creations. He doesn't say much more about it. But can you tell us what the gist of Reynard the Fox is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Reynard the Fox is this classic medieval beast epic, and it's essentially a series of satirical fables. Reynard, who's a fox, is this trickster figure, always outwitting his rivals, especially the lion, who represents the king. So it's a moral tale, but it's also really sharp satire of power and corruption in medieval society.
Sounds fun. Sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's got that playful trickster energy, but at the same time, it's got a lot of bite. Kind of like a medieval political cartoon, just with animals. So I can see why Lewis would hold it up as a major cultural milestone.
Oh man. Yeah, her just using the word energy right there just made me giggle. Sandy, any thoughts, anything you want to add before I continue with the letter?
Not immediate. Well, not immediately. It's just except that it's interesting that the medieval, the trickster figure shows up a lot of places. I'm used to hearing about it here from our indigenous culture, but I wasn't aware that it also was a figure. Well, I mean, I'm used to more hearing about like a Joker in like or the what is it in Shakespeare, but not
The
this.
jester.
The
Is
jester.
there a jester in Shakespeare? Yeah.
But yeah, so trickster. That's interesting.
All right, let me continue. Since writing the last sentence, I've come into college to entertain 2 people to dinner and spend the night. As they did not leave till 3 o'clock, it is now 10. I'm feeling rather morning afterish. One of them is a man called Dyson. Oh, he'll go on to become one of the Inklings. Yeah, here there's a footnote. Henry Victor Dyson, Hugo Dyson, 1896 to 1975, was an undergrad at Exeter College, Oxford, taking his BA in 1921. He was a lecturer, not a lecturer, I don't know what that is, and tutor in the University of Reading from 1921 to 45. And he was fellow and tutor in English literature at Merton College, 1945 to 1963. For details of their friendship and the part he played in the Inklings, see Surprised by Joy and Humphrey Carpenter's The Inklings, published 1978. And then also see Henry Victor Dyson, Hugo Dyson in the Biographical Index. I'm pretty sure that Dyson is one of the ones who, during some little famous scene from Lewis's history that we haven't gotten to yet, where he and Tolkien and I believe Dyson are walking. I could have this confused though. I know Tolkien was there for sure. And they were just talking about whether or not, the life of Christ was like historically true or something like that. And then this big wind just like started blowing on their walk. And he seemed to tie some type of a spiritual or godlike influence on that wind blowing and basically essentially, persuading him in a certain way that it was true. Or yeah, I don't think we've gotten there yet in Lewis's life on our project though. But that's what I'm reminded of when I hear him talk about Hugo Dyson. Who knows? Maybe this staying up till 3 a.m. is the very moment that I'm thinking of here, because he's only mentioned one of the 2. Maybe the other, the second person that he's about to mention here is Tolkien. All right. One of them is a man called Dyson who teaches English at Reading. He is only in Oxford for a few weeks, and having met him once, I liked him so well that I determined to get to know him better. That reminds me of the Muppets Christmas Carol. Come, know me better, man. That was what the ghost of Christmas Present said to Scrooge. My feeling was apparently reciprocated, and I think we sat up so late with the feeling that heaven knew when we might meet again, and the new friendship had to be freed past its youth and into maturity in a single evening. Although my head aches this morning, I do not regret it. Such things come rarely and are worth a higher price than this. He is a man who really loves truth, a philosopher and a religious man who makes his critical and literary activities depend on the former. None of your damned dilettante. Did I read that right? Yeah, dilettante. In appearance, he is like a plumper edition of Uncle Gussie and has something the same vivacity and quickness of speech, but a much more honestly merry laugh. Have you observed that it is the most serious conversations which produce in their course the best laughter? How we roared and fooled at times in the silence of last night, but always in a few minutes, buckled to again with renewed seriousness. Then, as always here, the close of the whole thing is the journey through pitch black cloisters to let them out by the little gate with my key, where after dark one suddenly sees the tower far above in the light cast up from the street lamps. How I shall remember all of this someday. It's the end of that paragraph. Does that spark anything for you, Sandy?
No, sadly, sitting here with that after awake headache, I'm like, what jumped out is he said rarely, happens rarely. Like, yeah, so no, I'm really sorry. I'm still
fine. No.
I can find an online version of this reading. I should just
no worries. I just didn't want to keep reading if you had something that you wanted to say. So I just wanted to open some space for you in case you needed it. I wanted to hold space for you, Sandy.
Thank you. I'll be a good online audience. We'll say that.
All right. Good deal. Feel free to jump in and interrupt anytime you like. He says the other man who visited with us was Coghill of Exeter, a friend of Chevas, who talks very much like Chevas, in voice, I mean, but is a far better fellow than Chevas. I am looking forward to reading Desert Islands and am glad to have your judgment of it. Here, this is a work by someone named, Walter de la Mare, Desert Islands, published 1930. Let's ask Robot Lady about this. Robot Lady, in this letter that we're still reading that Lewis wrote to Arthur Greeves, he references a book by Walter de la Mare called Desert Islands, published 1930. So I was about to say, how in the world could he have read this book if it was published in 1930? But that's where we are. We're in the year 1930 in our little project. But anyway, Robot Lady, are you familiar with this book? If not, can you please look it up and tell us what it's about? She's searching.
Sure. Walter de la Mare's Desert Islands, published in 1930, is a unique, offbeat work that blends essay, anthology, and reflection. It opens with a lyrical essay on the allure of desert island stories, then weaves together a series of notes and reflections on shipwrecks, solitude, and island lore, often connecting to classic works like Robinson Crusoe. It's more of a meditative journey through island imagery and culture than a straightforward narrative.
Thank you, Robot Lady.
Of course. Yeah, I'm really glad you asked about that because it sounds like a really rich, almost dreamlike book. So it makes sense why Lewis would be drawn to it at this point.
Well, it was recommended to him by his friend Arthur Greeves. He goes on to say, by the way, I forgot to thank you for your offer of the McDonald's. Again, he does not mean the food. He's talking about the George MacDonald books that Arthur Greeves has offered him. He says then here in Latin, pro tanto quid retubomus, as the tram cars say, what can I give you in return? Well, I'm glad he translated that for us. And then he goes on, about Johnson and Milton, wasn't it Milton's politics that made Johnson so unfair? Here there's a footnote. Johnson's Lives of the English Poets. It says, he's pulling from a quote here, Milton's republicanism was, I am afraid, founded in an envious hatred of greatness and a sullen desire of independence, in petulance, impatient of control, and pride disdainful of superiority. He hated monarchs in the state and prelates, P-R-E-L-A-T-E-S, in the church, for he hated all whom he was required to obey. It is to be suspected that this predominant desire was to destroy rather than establish, and that he felt not so much the love of liberty as repugnance to authority. Okay. Lewis continues, the old diehard Tory could never forgive the Puritan, Republican, and regicide yours, Jack. So apparently they got into some kind of discussion about Milton's politics. And that's the end of that letter. So there you go. There you have it. If you're dying to say something, Sandy, again, hop in whenever you like. But if not, I'll move on to the next letter. This one is also to Arthur Greaves, dated August 3rd. That last one, I think I said, was July 29th. Yeah. So he's trying to keep up a weekly correspondence. August 3rd, 1930. My dear Arthur, your account of your novel is certainly very obscure. I thought the whole was already typed, or was that only a draft? I am sorry that I cannot be present at the accouchement, however painful and disgusting. And he has that in quotes. I'm going to ask Robot Lady to define this word, unless you already know what it means. Sandy, accouchement.
Accoutrement? Is it
No,
French?
no. Let me spell it for Robot Lady and see if she can tell us. It's not accoutrement, because I have a general sense of what that is, and I think he's talking about something different here. This was a word that he used in the last letter that was kind of tied to someone who had just had a baby, apparently. Robot Lady, can you define this word for me? It's spelled accouchement.
Of course. Accouchement is a French word that refers to childbirth or the act of giving birth. So it's often used in a more formal or older context to describe the process of labor and delivery.
Okay, so apparently Arthur Greaves was being asked to...
Exactly, yeah. So it's definitely a clinical or formal term. Lewis is kind of wrestling with his reactions to this very natural, even biological event. And I think that's part of the tension he's trying to sort through in his feelings.
He said, I am sorry that I cannot be present at the childbirth, essentially, however, quote, painful and disgusting. So, yeah, I don't know who is having a baby. I'm not quite sure who it was that he was talking about in the last letter. It wasn't very clear. Let me read the paragraph from that last letter again. He says, I don't know quite what I feel about your assistance at our sister the cow's childbirth. I'm not sure why he's calling her our sister the cow. I know what I ought to feel, simply the same thrill that I feel at the first coming up of a flower. Physical disgust is a sensation which I have very often, and of which I am always ashamed. If one lets it grow upon one, it will in the end cut out one from all delighted participation in the life of nature. So he's disgusted by childbirth, or at a certain level, but he knows that it's something beautiful. Let's see. He said, God is gross and never heard of decency and cares nothing for refinement, nor do children, nor most women, nor any of the beasts, nor men either, except in certain sophisticated classes. And yet it is hard to feel that the faculty of disgust is a sheer evil from beginning to end. I don't know what to make of it. Perhaps in one way it is, and in another way it isn't. At any rate, there can be no two opinions about the delightfulness of seeing the other cows coming round to inspect the infant. Maybe by cows, he simply just means a woman that has a child. I don't know. I need to stop trying to put a nice, good veneer on this for C.S. Lewis and just let him speak for himself. Did they show any signs of congratulating the mother? For I notice when one of our hens lays an egg, all join in the noise. So that's what we were talking about before. Okay, now I have a better sense of what he was talking about there. And he was also getting into whether or not the feeling of disgust is always a bad thing, or sometimes it's a good thing. Who knows? But he doesn't think that it's a good thing for him to associate it with childbirth. Let's see. He goes on. I've been wondering, we're back to our current letter. I've been wondering why these days of rain and wind in the summer have such a charm for me. Is it simply an offshoot of my general love of winter? And these days please me as a foretaste of winter, as if the wind shook summer and he buttoned his coat and said, Dear me, I'm beginning to get old. I walked in the fields beyond Barton after tea today and sat under a hedge. The sort of hedge that is nearly all trees. The wind tossed it and tumbled it, and from the field, which was full of stacks of corn, Straws kept on blowing up to me. Endless rain clouds went overhead. Somehow I was very happy in it. Snug, you know. And yet one ought to feel snugger in a warm ditch in winter. Or is it that such days fall outside one's conventional categories of the seasons, being neither typical summer days, nor typical autumn days, nor typical anything, and therefore thwarting one's derivative reactions and all that has been already stereotyped by literature and painting? They force one to wake up and see the thing as it really is? Or is it part of the same general law which makes the landscape look more exciting upside down? However, a fool can ask more questions in an hour than a wise man can answer in a lifetime. Oh, that's funny.
Sadly true.
Let's see. I'm looking through the comments here. Daniel says, lots of Indian food in England, so maybe he thinks of cows as holy, or is Lewis just being a jerk? Who knows? All right. Well, at least he is considering himself a fool for all of these meandering questions that he's asking, or at least the possibility of it. He continues, the other thing I was thinking on my walk was this. I had just begun, is it Monsieur? I guess it's Monsieur, maybe. No, he's just abbreviating. He puts M period and then Arnold. He means Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold's work on the study of Celtic literature. He says, I just began this, and looking on to the end, I saw that he said that German Romanticism, he particularly mentioned Novalis, was a kind of clumsy attempt at the natural magic of the Celts. Novalis, it says here in the footnote, was the pseudonym of the German Romantic poet and novelist Friedrich Leopold von Hardenberg, published 1772 to 1801, known as Friedrich Leopold von Hardenberg to the rest of us, apparently, also known as Novalis. Lewis says about this opinion from Matthew Arnold, now I was perfectly certain that whatever else was true, that was not. But this set me puzzling as to what the real difference between the two was. I found that when I tried to get the spirit of German romance, I got the idea of smiths, gold, dwarfs, forests, mountains, cottages, and castles, while the other gave me the idea of water and rushes and clouds. Then I noted the Celtic was much more sensuous, also less homely, also entirely lacking in reverence, of which the Germanic was full. Then again, that the Germanic glowed, in a sense, with rich, somber colors, while the Celtic was all transparent and full of nuances, evanescent, but very bright. One sees that Celtic is essentially pagan, not merely in the sense of being heathen, that is, not Christian, as the Germanic may be, but in the sense of being irredeemably pagan, frivolous under all its melancholy, incapable of growing into religion, and, I think, a little heartless. In fact, add Roman civilization to it, and you get France. I'm not running it down. Before it gets Romanized, it is delicious and refreshing. I don't want to give up either. They are almost one's male and female soul. Do you feel at all in sympathy with what I've been saying? And do you agree that the Germanic, gold and smiths, runs peculiar, let me try and say this word again, peculiarly to mineral images, that is, the earth, while Celtic runs to the elements? I think in The Tempest, Caliban is almost a picture of the Germanic at its lowest, and Ariel, the Celtic. But look at the lovely earthy poetry put in Caliban's mouth on 2 occasions. To be frank, I was rather prepared for desert islands turning out a disappointment, though my hopes had been temporarily resurrected by what you said of it. Delamare has fallen infinitely below himself. I was looking at the Connoisseur again not long ago. This is a work by Walter Delamare, published 1926, our footnote instructs us. He says, of course, the Connoisseur is good. He can't write anything that isn't good. But isn't there just a touch of the dilettante about it? Certainly a lack of real spirituality one finds in the Veil. Sandy, do you know this word dilettante? I've heard it before, but I don't know what it means.
Oh, neither do I.
Okay, let's ask.
Let's see. I'm looking it up.
Oh, okay.
Cultivate an area of interest such as the arts or sciences as a pastime rather than a profession. Often in a superficial, amateurish, or non-professional way.
Okay. So then he said...
Okay.
Oh, no. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just look an amateur or a dabbler, somebody. Yeah.
Okay. So this is what Lewis is saying. He says in Delamare, isn't there just a touch of amateurism about it? Certainly a lack of the real spirituality one finds in The Veil. My idea is that he really bade goodbye to the best part of himself in the lovely poem, Be Not Too Wildly Amorous of the Far. This is the opening line of the poem, The Imagination's Pride, that Delamare wrote in The Veil and other poems, published 1921. Where was that? Okay, the peculiar kind of vision, Lewis says, that Delamare had was of a strangely piercing quality and probably almost unbearable to the possessor. Only a man of great solidity, of real character, sound at the bases of his mind and braced with philosophy, could have carried it safely. But Delamare was not such a man. It was quite likely really leading him to madness, and he knew it. Hardly knowing what he did, and yet just knowing, he sent it away. I am told that he lives in the midst of the silly London literary sets. His real day is over. Do you think this a possible theory? He moves on to another topic. Yes, the witch is gone. Do you ever go into Libero Garden? How strange it would be for you to sit on that summer seat now. It almost makes me shudder. So here he's talking about his childhood home, Little Lee, which they just recently sold for roughly $250,000 to $260,000 US dollars in the year 2026. So the equivalent purchasing power of that value. He and his brother sold the house after their father died. And here the witch Lewis is referencing, I think her name is Mary Cullen. I think that's her name. She was the last remaining servant that was kept on staff until they sold the house. And they refer, he and his brother, or maybe it was just he and Arthur, refer to her as the Witch of Endor. So he says to Arthur, yes, the witch is gone. And wouldn't it be strange for you to then go sit on the summer seat that's now in the, I guess, the front yard of the Little Lee house, especially since it's owned by someone else. Lewis says the idea of it makes him shudder. He says, do you know, it sometimes comes to me as a shock to realize that all the rest of Strand Town is going on just the same. So yeah, I mean, he's basically put a part of his entire life to rest along with his father, that home, all the memories associated with it. That's where his memories of his mother were from the time, he was born until he was 8 years old. And just the good and the bad that he had in his memory about both of his parents, and the good times that he spent with his brother there. He says, as to when you and I, Arthur, shall meet, we are moving house in September. He and Mrs. Moore and Maureen. He says, I'm going to tell you nothing about this so that it will be a surprise when you see it. So I am afraid I shall not be able to come to Ireland this summer. So this is a pretty big deal. The place that they're moving to, I'll spoil it because I've read ahead, but they're moving to the Kilns, the place where Lewis, the home that the famous now home of C.S. Lewis, as he, became much more popular than he is at this stage in his life in 1930. and where he lived until his last days. So they're moving to the Kilns, but he's not revealing it here yet. He wants it to be a surprise. So sorry for spoiling your surprise, C.S. Lewis. But I didn't spoil it to Arthur. I just spoiled it to the rest of the internet here, I don't know, 70, 80, 96 years later. So sorry about that. Where did I leave off? I'm not going to tell you anything about it. It surprised you, so I'm afraid I shall not be able to come to Ireland this summer. As to your coming here, it would be obviously a bad time to choose the move. I'd heard your views on this after your last experience. I think October would be best for you to come, and we'll keep you informed. Of course, if you are in England at the end of August, let me know. How I long for one of talks together, and how I would like to see you peering into the pages of my Ellis's metrical romances, which at last I have got. This is George Ellis, Specimens of Early English Metrical Romances, published 1805. He gets excited about some of the most, what would seem to me, clinical things, but perhaps I'm just ignorant on all this. Not perhaps, I am. He says, not to mention the William Morris volumes that I got. Apropos of which, and this is what my whole letter should have been about, what with Morris and other things, I really seem to have had youth given back to me lately. But I must try to describe this another time, as I am spoiling the margin which you demand. Yours, Jack. So that's the end of that letter. Yeah, he's been enjoying revisiting William Morris, the books that he had read and some of the ones that he hadn't read yet, and starting to see things there more deeply than he had seen them before. That's something that he mentioned in a letter that we covered in our last episode. And of course, Lewis is going through a spiritual transformation. He's crossing that bridge ever so slowly between atheism and some sort of a belief that God exists. Who precisely that God is and which tradition he most aligns with, at least from Lewis's perspective, he has not gotten to that place yet, but he is now in an active contact with another entity that he sees as God in his meditation times, and he's trying to foster that relationship to improve and to grow himself. And it's having an effect in a couple of different areas, but I would not doubt it's also having an effect on the things that he reads and the things that he is now seeing that he was never able to see before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can really see how his rediscovery of these old literary touchstones like Morris and Ellis is rekindling a kind of youthful wonder, but also grounding him. And yeah, that spiritual shift is so gradual, like a bridge he's crossing step by step. It's really powerful to see, especially in these small moments, like his reactions to the books. I think it's really helping him expand his horizons, both intellectually and spiritually.
I got surprised there for a second because I thought I had Robot Lady's earmuffs on. I didn't know she was she was listening. And yes, E. Olson, that was a reference to Old School. Thanks for catching that. All right, next letter, also to Arthur Greaves, sent August 13th, 1930. My dear Arthur, I wonder what has happened. Are you ill or away or simply lazy? However, as you wrote to me so perseveringly during my silence, though you must allow that mine was foretold and unavoidable, I will continue to write during yours, and also to prevent a bad habit of silence setting in on both sides. It is a curious thing that as I look back, I can remember no breaks in the regular course of letters during the Bookham period. Of course, the Bookham period is the time that Lewis spent getting one-on-one tutoring from W.T. Kirkpatrick, someone who had a huge influence on Lewis's intellectual life and really was basically a linchpin or a key in preparing Lewis for being able to make it into Oxford in the first place. So the days that he spent in Bookham, he was consistently exchanging letters with Arthur. And so this is what he's referring to here, that period of their lives. He says, breaks, I suppose, there must have been, and my failure to recollect them is part of the same delusion. but not all delusion either of memory, which makes the past summers always fine and the past winters always frosty. Yet on the whole, I do really think that we were very regular and am very anxious to keep it up now without a break, at least until the habit is so fully formed that it is sure to survive a short intermission. This is becoming rather prosy. Let's see if he shifts gears in the letter once I can get this page turned. Yes, he does. Talking about the breaking of resolutions, you see how skillfully I glide away from my prosing to something really gay and brilliant and witty and novel. In fact, much more rational, but much less like a ball. Here, this is this is footnoted as a quote or a reference to Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, chapter 11. Much more rational, but much less like a ball. Talking then of resolutions, Lewis continues, but we weren't talking, yes, but we are now talking of resolutions. One of the worst things about a moral relapse, to me, is that it throws such a shadow back on the time before, during which you thought you were getting on quite well. Yes. Having found oneself for the 100th time back where one started, it seems so obvious that one has never really moved at all, and that what seemed progress was only a dream, or even the irrelevant result of circumstances or physical condition. Yeah, he talks a little bit about this in Mere Christianity, where he says, if you're trying to stop a particular sin or sinful habit or some type of a, moral failure that you have just inbuilt as a habit, and you find yourself failing at your attempts, he says the more important thing than the result is just continuing to try again. Now he moves to a different topic. I have again begun my German and do half an hour every morning before beginning my other work. I am still at Novalis. You will wonder how I have not finished it long ago. And even to myself, I seem to have been reading it almost all my life. As I go about the pace of a schoolboy translating Caesar, I expect it will last for the rest of my days. I am like the man in the story. Why not buy a book? Oh, I have one already. I don't know which story he's talking about there. But yeah, I can kind of feel the gist of what Lewis is talking about here. I feel like I will not be done with this project before my days come to an end. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's been about a year and a half, and I've pretty much made it through this volume almost. We're over 90% done, as well as his diary that I have over there on the other desk. So we'll see how it goes. And we are in the year 1930. Lewis only lives until 1963, so we've already just on a year and a half or so gotten through the first 31 years of his life. So who knows? Maybe I'll be done with this a lot faster than I thought. Let's see here. What was the last thing that he said? Why don't you buy a book? Oh, I already have a book. This certainly leads to economy. It has better results too, as you know. Heinrich von Ofterdingen, which I am reading, is a very MacDonaldy book. Indeed, Novalis is perhaps the greatest single influence on MacDonald, full of holiness, gloriously German romantic, i.e., a delicious mingling of earthly homeliness and magic, also of a sort of spiritual voluptuousness with innocence, and to be compelled to spell out such stuff word by word instead of galloping greedily through. It is, as I certainly should if I could find a translation, really forces me to get the most out of it. There is no translation either into French or English, so you will have to rely on what I tell you. However, I have probably said all this before. Last night I slept very little, owing to a pain I sometimes have, which says is the kidneys. So I have gone a walk longer than usual today in the hope of tiring myself out. So Joey is his cousin who lives back in Ireland and is a doctor. And it's interesting because Joey says that this pain that he sometimes has is in his kidneys, which, if I remember correctly, Lewis ultimately succumbed to some version of kidney disease in his last days. In spite of the heavy green August foliage, it really might be October. The wailing wind and the clouds are sheer autumn. How unfortunate it is that you cannot follow my walks as I can yours. It would convey nothing to you if I said that I went through the Etons, Wood Eaton and Water Eaton. The first half of the walk is all in a road, absolutely flat, with a clear stream behind it. Through every break in the high hedges, you get specimens of that sort of beauty that flat country has. That is, that you never see further than across the first field and beyond its furthest hedge and big elms, though really scattered, look like a continuous forest. Nearer, of course, are wild flowers and the cows whisking their tails. Wood Eaton itself is an almost ideal village. And I say Eaton, it's spelled E-A-T-O-N. I'm not saying eating with the G left off. Wood Eaton itself is an almost ideal village. There is a great house, Georgian, severe in outline, but mellowed with yellow moss, in a park where there are some fine cedars, about 16 cottages round a pond, and green, all of gray stone and nearly all thatched, a church, and in every direction very high walls of flat stones without mortar. And inside them, the invariable rows of huge elms, greatly improved this afternoon by the wind. Let's see, this great Georgian house is named Vita Sackville West. Oh, no, I don't know what he's talking about here. I might be looking at I'm looking at the wrong footnote. The name of the house is called Wood Eaton Hall. Sorry about that. All right. He says, thence my walk led out into open fields where the flatness made the sky enormous and the cows seemed to go on forever and ever. Do you know the strange sort of contrast there is in such a place on such a day between the utter placidity of the landscape and the hurry and scurry of the clouds? At least the clouds immediately overhead, far away on the horizon with the absent sun shining on them, one always sees remote, clear, shining clouds that look almost calmer than anything else in the world. The only adventure on the ground was the sudden discovery of a field almost black with crows, which of course dashed up cawing into the air as I approached them, and then were blown about. The untidy crows, as Sackville West says in The Land, a poem you should read, speaking of their flight on a windy day. Now this, Vita Sackville West, The Land, published 1926. The poem is Autumn. That's what Lewis was talking about there. Did I tell you that I've been reading a lot of Matthew Arnold's prose? I've got to for tutorial purposes. Oh, I remember. I talked about him in my last letter. I don't know that I recommended him. How do you get on with your Johnson? And how does your accouchement proceed? Perhaps it is that which has hindered you from writing. I had a most horrible dream the other night, which I retail in case you would like to make use of it. Mrs. Lovell was a poor old woman whom Minto, that's Mrs. Moore, used to give odd jobs to. She has now disappeared. I dreamed that I went to a cupboard in the kitchen to look for something. A heavy thing in brown paper dropped out at my feet. Picking it up and unwinding it, I found Mrs. Lovell's head. I think it might be worked in along with the hairy gums, your grandmother, etc., into the super shocker that so often flits about our minds. There will, I think, be no shortage of hedgehogs in our new garden. Do write. Yours, Jack. Well, that sounds like a terrifying dream. Go into your cupboard, open some brown wrapping paper, and have the head of someone you know spill out onto the floor. Don't know why I'm laughing. It's terrifying. All right, let's see how much time I've got. Yeah, I can do another letter or two. Stick around as long as you feel like you want, Sandy. Leave whenever you need, and comment as you like. Ooh, this next one looks long, so this might be our... Oh, no, it's not that long. All right, we might be able to do two more. Okay. To Arthur Greaves, August 18th, 1930, he says, "My dear Arthur, the first thing when one is being worried as to whether one will have to have an operation or whether one is a literary failure is to assume absolutely mercilessly that the worst is true, and to ask, what then? If it turns out in the end that the worst is not true, so much the better. But for the meantime, the question must be resolutely put out of mind. Otherwise, your thoughts merely go round and round, a wearisome circle, now hopeful, now despondent, then hopeful again. The way, this way or that way, madness lies. Having settled, then, that the worst is true, one can proceed to consider the situation, and I will talk to you as one in that situation." Lewis here most certainly is parroting George MacDonald, because I remember a MacDonald quote that's very similar to this. Your thoughts going round and round, back and forth, from hopeful to despondent to hopeful to despondent. That way madness lies, is exactly how MacDonald ends a quote where he's talking about a believer in Christ wondering, am I saved or am I not saved? He said, in this way or that way, madness lies. So whether Lewis intended it or not, or perhaps George MacDonald got that from someone else, and it was just more of a popular saying than I am aware of. I at least suspect that MacDonald influenced that statement that Lewis made right there. Let's see. Having settled then that the worst is true, one can proceed to consider the situation, and I will talk to you as one in that situation. I don't know if he's talking about a health condition of Arthur Greaves or something else entirely. Let's see what he has to say. "Now, the worst of all things we usually say to a man who is suffering is that they inevitably provoke him to retort in feeling, if not in words, 'Yes, it's all very well for you. It isn't your tooth that is aching.' So as soon as I read your letter, I bethought me of myself on the evening when the manuscript of Dymer came back from Heineman's rejected without a word of criticism or encouragement." Okay, so I don't think he's talking about a health problem. I think he's talking about a piece that Arthur wrote and perhaps was rejected. So let's see what he's getting at here. "So when it came back from the publishing house, Heineman's rejected without a word of criticism or encouragement. And I remember that after a very miserable night, I sat down to assume the worst, as I advise you to do, and on that basis to come to terms with the situation. Only I did it in writing. I have been into college this morning and found the document, which I enclose. It is perfectly genuine and unaltered, except for the marginal notes, which I have now added in explanation of one or two expressions you might not have come across. I don't know whether it will be any help to you. It was of the greatest to me. You will be tempted to say that my situation was quite different from yours, for I succeeded in the end. To this I answer, 1, that when I wrote this document, I did not know I should succeed in publishing. 2, that when I did finally publish, the book was a complete failure. To you, no doubt, at the moment, it seems that to read your own book in print and to have it liked by a few friends would be ample bliss, whether anyone bought it or not. Believe me, Arthur, this is an absolute delusion. It might satisfy you for a moment, but very soon, if I didn't sell, you would find yourself just as disappointed, if it didn't sell, you would find yourself just as disappointed as you are right now. So that in this sense, I am still as disappointed an author as you. From the age of 16 onwards, I had one single ambition, from which I never wavered, in the prosecution of which I spent every ounce I could on, which I really and deliberately staked my whole contentment. And I recognize myself as having unmistakably failed in it. So that not only in my enclosed document, but now in this letter, I feel that I have some right to talk to you as a man in the same boat. Suffering of the sort that you are now feeling is my special subject, my profession, my long suit, the thing I claim to be an expert in. And if I were not writing to a man still smarting under the novelty of the blow, I should point out at length how absurd it is to dignify such disappointment with the name of suffering in a word like this, or in a world like this. Sorry. There is a woman lives in our road who is sinking into creeping paralysis and going blind. And for the last 3 nights, she has been awake and crying all night with neuritis. She says, I feel as if my blood was boiling in my arms. This side of the question you cannot yet be ready to feel. It would be more than human if you did. I only mention it because otherwise I would be ashamed, in speaking of myself, to use the noble word suffering. However, whether you call it suffering or not, I claim to be a dab at it. The worst of it is that all the mental habits contracted during the work go on after hope is dead. You see a tree waving in the wind and you think, I'll put that in. You notice some psychological fact in yourself and you think, by Jove, I'll use that in such a scene. You read it in some review, a statement about contemporary literature, and you think, I wonder if his opinion will be modified when he reads, and then bang, it comes back again. All that is over. And yet one has to go through with it. And little by little, the real consolations come. Read what Bunyan says about the Valley of Humiliation. Pause here for a second because there's a footnote. He's talking, of course, about John Bunyan in the Pilgrim's Progress. Oh, I see that E. Olson and Daniel had to leave. So thanks for joining, guys. Sorry I didn't notice it before you left, but thanks for being here. And Ron, glad that you're here with us. Welcome. You can see we've got Sandy standing in for Robot Lady. Oh, sorry, Daniel, you didn't leave. You were just saying bye to E. Olson. All right, cool. All right, Sandy, you're standing in for Robot Lady, which I appreciate. That's what I always wanted with this project. I only brought Robot Lady's earmuffs are still on, so she can't hear this. She's not going to get her feelings hurt. I only have Robot Lady here by necessity because I could never. I would always have to coordinate with somebody in order to do something like this. And usually I was doing it way earlier in the morning, and that's typically when I do it than when anybody's available to join anyway. So yeah, let me continue. He talks about John Bunyan here, and he says, let me remind you about the Valley of Humiliation, and perhaps the value of it as well. In Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress, Part 2, page 252, quote, when we went down the hill into the Valley of Humiliation, Mr. Fearing went down as well as ever I saw a man in my life, for he cared not how mean he was, so he might be happy at last. Yes, I think there was a kind of sympathy betwixt the valley and him, for I never saw him better in all his pilgrimage than when he was in that valley. And then Lewis goes on to say, also read about Enodos at the low island where the old woman lived. Enodos, if I remember right, is a character from one of George MacDonald's books. Is it Fantastes? I think it's Fantastes, if I remember right. Lewis continues. So he's essentially saying, hey, this humiliating moment is probably good for your soul. For it is quite true what my document says. The side of me which longs not to write, for no one can stop us doing that, but to be approved as a writer is not the side of us that is really worth much. And depend upon it, unless God has abandoned us, he will find means to cauterize that side somehow or other. If we can take the pain well and truly now, and by it, forever get over the wish to be distinguished beyond our fellows, well. If not, we shall get it again in some other form. And honestly, the being cured, with all the pain, has pleasure too. One creeps home tired and bruised into a state of mind that is really restful when all one's ambitions have been given up. Then one can really, for the first time, say, thy kingdom come. For in that kingdom there will be no preeminences, and a man must have reached the stage of not caring two straws about his own status before he can enter it. Man, this is our first, quote, C.S. Lewis quote of this journey. That's the first one where where it gave me the willies a little bit, where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is the kind of stuff that I'm used to reading in like his published works after he's, more formed in his Christian walk or in his Christian faith. That's pretty good stuff right there. What do you, any thoughts, Sandy?
No, I'm going to confess that my head is still hurting. Just enjoying.
No worries. No worries. I really like that though. He's saying, hey, in my experience, this wanting to be approved, this approval seeking by others, is not a good part of our being, and God is going to remove it. And if he doesn't remove it in this particular stage of our lives, he's eventually going to remove it. So better that it happens sooner than later, because it will probably be even more painful the longer that we let it live in us.
Is it stunting? I'm thinking of current day conversations with other writers. And one recently, that if you have things to say and you don't say them because you're waiting to get published or some other, that really, that's not good for you or the world. You're both missing out kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. What does he say here again? Then one can really, for the first time, say, thy kingdom come, once you've let go of all of your ambitions have been given up. There will be no preeminences, and a man must have reached the stage of not caring two straws about his own status before he can enter this kingdom. Think how difficult, Lewis goes on to say, that would be if one succeeded as a writer. How bitter this necessary purgation at the age of 60, when literary success had made your whole life, and you had then got to begin to go through the stage of seeing it all as dust and ashes. Perhaps God has been specially kind to us in forcing us to get over it at the beginning. At all events, whether we like it or not, we have got to take the shock. As you know so well, we have got to die. Cry, kick, swear, we may. Only like Lilith to come to the end and die far more painfully and later. Well, this is what I was just saying before. Does it sound like priggery if I say, I implore you? Heaven knows I do it as a friend, not as a preacher. I do it only because you stand very high among the half dozen people whom I love. I implore you then, seriously, to regard your present trouble as an opportunity for carrying the dying process a stage further. There's something in that sentence that reminded me of one of Paul's epistles. Regard your present trouble. We regard our present trouble as nothing or something like that compared to the joys that await us. That is a very loose paraphrasing. Or maybe it was, I don't know if that's in Peter. It's somewhere in the New Testament. I'm not sure who wrote it. Let's see. I implore you then seriously to regard your present trouble as an opportunity for carrying the dying process a stage further. If necessary, go back to the Puritan language that you were brought up in. He was brought up as a Quaker. And you know where you are sure to turn for consolation. In other words, they are bound to leave a man, permanently perhaps, very much better or very much worse than they found him. So far, I have said nothing about Reed's judgment, nor about your going on with the attempt. I am afraid, human nature being what it is, you must have gleaned eagerly through this letter for some word on those very subjects, even have wondered dismally when I would have done moralizing, and when I would have gotten finished with my moralizing and get down to business. Perhaps when you so strongly urged me to write, you had always the hope that my letter would restore your confidence in yourself as a literary man. Perhaps all this time what you are asking yourself is, does this letter mean to say that Jack thinks Reed is probably right and doesn't like to say so? Poor Arthur, you must, it is only nature, be simply starving for some word of literary encouragement instead of all this moral encouragement. But don't you also see that I mustn't give it? For as long as you are still thinking about that, still wondering whether Reed is right, you haven't taken the first step. Whether you are going to be a writer or not, in either case, you must so far die as to get over putting that question first. The other thing is so very much more important. For be sure, until we learn better, we shall get this kind of suffering again and again. Better take it now. Better learn the trick that makes you free for the future. It sounds merely brutal, I expect. But do remember I'm in the same boat. I would have given almost anything. I shudder to think what I would have given if I had been allowed to be a successful writer. So don't think I am writing this in order to avoid giving my own opinion about your possibilities of success. I couldn't give an opinion in any case without seeing the book. But I am writing you, as I do simply and solely, because I think the only thing for you to do is absolutely to kill the part of you that wants success. It's like in Fantastes where the voice said, "Ride at him or be a slave forever." All right, he's done with that. Moving on to something else. At present, 1, Maureen is away. 2, Minto is bad with indigestion. 3, we are going to move on September 25th. 4, there is a possible visitor in the next 3 weeks. Well, let me pause for a second. We know now what Lewis is doing with his portion of the money of the sale of the house in Belfast. They're putting it into this new home that they're moving into. 4, there is a possible visitor in the next 3 weeks. And the visitor's name is unspecified, so Lewis doesn't even know who the visitor is going to be. In these distressing conditions, I can neither go to you nor ask you to come to me. That sounds a bit like Paul in one of his epistles. But I could, I am pretty sure, get you quite nice rooms in Old Headington, and we could meet every day. I am dying to show you the new place and to have a walk and talk with you. Would you think of this while your mother is away? Do, it would honestly give me more pleasure than any possible thing at the moment. I am sorry to seem so inhospitable, and I would love to come to you for a week if I could. Write soon. If you eat this, you will grow into a unicorn. I hope you won't loathe this letter. Yours, Jack. Then it goes on to say, the document referred to in the letter above with notes added, the 18th of August, 1930. Oh, now we get to read the letter where Lewis was writing about his dreams dashed against the rocks of being a published writer when Dymer, well, no, sorry. He had already had a book of poems published. But when he had this narrative, Dymer rejected by the publisher. Here's what he sat down and wrote. Saturday, March 6, 1926. Last night, Heinemann's returned the manuscript of Dymer, on which I have been at work for several years. Though I intend to try all the publishers, it seems good, in the event of a complete failure, to find out by the analysis of my present disappointment what exactly it is I hope to gain by poetical success. Oh, he wants to be a successful poet. That's it. And what the abandonment of the hope would mean. To understand is the safest resource. 1. A certain part of my disappointment is clearly special to the present case. Heinemann's has treated me well before. I had allowed myself to think of them as, oh gosh, he's got a Greek word here in Greek letters, and I don't know what it means. Think of them as something positive, I guess, is what he means here. And I flattered myself when being admitted to the rank of the number of good poets whose work they actually publish. I had also hoped that rejection, if it came, would come signed by Evans with some personal expression of regret or kindness. This is an element in my feelings at the moment which cannot occur when another house returns it. It may therefore be eliminated. 2, I may clearly also eliminate the desire for money, as I never seriously hoped that Dymer would pay, or if in more sanguine moods, I sometimes dreamed of having a few pounds of extra pocket money by it. This is something that counts for a negligible quantity in my disappointment. 3, I can also rule out, though not entirely, the desire for fame. If this means the desire to be known as the author of an approved poem, the Monstreri Digito, or Digito. 2, it is true that I should like greatly to be known and praised by 1 or 2 friends and good judges, but I hold this as a refinement of pleasure easily foregone. If it went by another's name, so long as it was read and liked, I should be quite content. 4, but I cannot say that I desire not my fame, but that of the poem, in the impossible case of an exactly similar poem written by someone else and winning success, I should be very far from content. Though no one else need know that the approved poem is mine, I at least must know it. The feeling is not, therefore, a disinterested love for Dymer, simply as a poem I happen to like. 5, it is then a desire that something which I recognize as my own should be publicly found good. Whether it is known by others to be mine is of comparatively little importance. Is it then what Aristotle says? I desire public praise as a proof that it really is good. That is, I wish to be able to think that I am a good poet and desire applause, though not paid to my name, as a means to that end. 6, this is the most probable account yet suggested. 1 objection occurs. If an archangel or a mystical intuition admitting of no doubt assured me that Dymer was the greatest poem ever written by man, but added that it would never be read, I should be hardly more contented than I am now. The supposition, however, raises many difficulties. A, is the reason of my dissatisfaction that a poem unread is not a poem at all, and that there is therefore no sense in calling it great? B, does the disinterested wish that, if it were great, humanity should enjoy it, count for anything? C, is my acquiescence in not being known or thought great by others not quite what it seemed to be in para? Oh, sorry. It seemed to be in paragraph 3. That's what he's saying. 7. B, what I just mentioned above, that distinguished or disinterested wish that if it were great, humanity should enjoy it. This is very attractive, but I cannot find that it is what I feel. No poem is indispensable. In my worst moods, I never supposed that the spirit of man would be the worse for not having Dymer. Let it be as good as you like. They will get the same thing out of other books sooner or later. For in a larger sense and in the long run, we do get the same thing out of different books. 8. A certainly seems to be true. A, again, as a reminder, is he thinks that possible reason for his dissatisfaction is that a poem unread is not a poem at all. And then there's no sense in being called great if nobody even reads it. He said, A certainly seems to be true. The greatness of a poem can mean only the good that particular readers do actually get from it. And it is certain that no acknowledgement, however public, of my claims as a poet would make up for Dymer's not being read and enjoyed. If my archangel promised that the human race would go about ever after lamenting a great lost work of mine and pay me the highest honors, no doubt this would give me some kind of pleasure, but not the kind I am really concerned about at present. 9. This seems to have some truth in it. This part C, his acquiescence in not being known or thought great by others, is not quite what it seemed to be. He says, this seems to have some truth in it. I shall be forced to admit that I do not want public praise for someone called Lewis. I do not want it for the author of Dymer. In fact, the suggestion in paragraph 5 is not true. Paragraph 5 again said, a desire that something which he recognizes as his own should be publicly found good. He says, that's not true. I do not desire the praise simply as a proof. I desire that my value as a poet should be acknowledged by others as well as myself, even if they do not know where to find this great poet or what he looks like, etc. Perhaps some dream of being sooner or later discovered mixes still with my acquiescence in such anonymous success. I honestly don't know, though I might know if I could be perfectly honest. That problem I leave open for the present. 10. My desire then contains 2 elements. A, the desire for some proof to myself that I am a poet. B, the desire that my poethood should be acknowledged, even if no one knows that it is mine. B is a means to A, but it is not valued only as a means. Possible reason 11 for my disappointment. As far as I can see, both these are manifestations of the single desire for what may be called mental or spiritual rank. I have flattered myself with the idea of being among my own people when I was reading the poets, and it is unpleasing to have to stand down and take my place in the crowd. Such a desire is contrary to my own settled principles, the very principles which I expressed in Dymer. It is fair to say that I had already gone some way towards repressing it. The writing of Dymer was a purgation. When the completion of the poem, sorry, I lost my spot. When the completion of the poem, Coghill's praise of it, and the sending off to a publisher's, after so many years, threw me back into a tumult of self-love that I thought I had escaped. This must be recognized as pure retrogression. The desire will not bear examination. To stand above, and here he uses another Greek word that I do not know how to translate. 3 is a wish that that cannot be universalized. 4, worst of all, I have used the belief in such secret preeminence as a compensation for things that wearied or humiliated me in real life. Thomas Brown's insidious nonsense about they that look upon my outside, etc. 12, the cure of this disease is not easy to find, except the sort of violent surgical care or surgical cure which reality itself may be preparing for me. I was free from it at times when writing Dymer. Then I was interested in the object, not in my own privileged position of seer of the object. But whenever I stopped writing or thought of publication or showed the manuscript to friends, I contemplated not that of which I had been writing, but my writing about it. I passed from looking at the macrocosm, 6, to looking at a little historical event inside of me. The only healthy or happy or eternal life is to look so steadily on the world that the representation me fades away. Its appearance at all in the field of consciousness is a mark of inferiority in the state where it appears. Its claiming a central position is disease. 13. Is self-consciousness, the possibility of contemplating the object, me, a pure mistake? It may be, rather than this power of objectifying myself has its value as a necessary preliminary to being rid of it. Daniel asks, purgation, like purgative? I like that word. Let me ask. Hey, robot lady, what does the word purgation mean? Purgation?
Sure. Purgation refers to a process of cleansing or purification, often used in a spiritual or emotional sense. It can mean getting rid of something harmful, like guilt or a bad habit, or even referring to a ritual purification process. So it's all about clearing out what's no longer needed to make way for something better.
So purgatory is the place where purgation happens.
Exactly. Purgatory in a religious sense is often seen as a state or place where the soul is purified. So it's that process of purgation where one is being cleansed of sin before reaching full spiritual fulfillment.
Thank you for that, robot lady. Let's see. I don't know what he's saying here in this next part, but he has 1, my ain folk. 2, being pointed at with the finger, i.e. pointed out as the great man in the streets. 3, the ordinary man. 4, Kant says that you should desire nothing which you can't universalize, i.e. desire for everyone else as well as for yourself. Now, clearly, I can't desire that everyone should be preeminent above the ordinary run of people, for there would be then no ordinary run. This reminds me of Syndrome from The Incredibles. If everyone's super, no one is. And therefore, no preeminence. 5, i.e., used it to console myself by saying, I mayn't cut a great figure externally, but if only you knew what a poet I was. And then 6, the great world. And that is the end of that little enclosure that he gave to Arthur to kind of help him in the trial that Arthur is going through right now. Yeah, that's where I'll stop. The next is a letter to Arthur Greeves dated August 28th, 1930. And then there's 7, 8, 9, 10 more letters in a row to Arthur Greeves as well. So we will have much more of this good stuff, I'm sure, because Arthur is the person that he trusts most in the world, and will share the deepest parts of his spirit and his heart and his life with Arthur. So we probably have some more good stuff to chew on in the coming episodes. Well, that's all I've got. Sandy, do you have anything else?
No, it's an it's an interesting few letters. Now having I've been taking poetry courses because I write myself. So listening to Lewis dialogue with his friend about that place and about what it means is actually very timely and interesting to me. So kind of that how to be in the foreground and the background. in appropriate ways, you know, like if you're actually being visible as a writer and not being, what was that from The Incredibles? If everybody's super, nobody.
No one is.
Yeah, don't try to be super, and don't try to make everyone else super. That's funny.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness. All right,
This
Daniel's
is a
taking
very-
off.
Oh,
Good to see you,
later.
Daniel.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought of Lewis pre his well-known writings so much since I started listening to you talk about it. And so it's kind of, it's very, yeah, I was going to say revealing, but as I'm thinking about that word, that works both directions. It's very revealing about Lewis, but it's also very revealing about myself, how I'm perceiving things. To actually listen to how he's talking to his friend, like this is very, these are very tangible places in our lives, not theory at all. You know, they're actual tangible places. So. And I'm going to stop talking because the headache has settled well in behind and my eyes are starting to burn. So I'm like, yeah,
Oh, no.
Whatever you've got, you probably need a walk in fresh air and maybe a little bit of honey lemon in your tea.
Goodness. Yeah. My throat was having trouble towards the end there.
Yeah, I could.
Well, hopes and prayers for that headache to evacuate, because that is not a nice feeling. So hopefully you feel better soon, Sandy. Thanks for hopping on. It's great to see you again. And let's do this again sometime. And of course, you know, we've got our Weight of Glory conversation saved in the ether, and I'll load it up for once we actually get there. But if anybody wants a preview of that, Sandy has posted it on her channel.
Oh my gosh, I only posted half of it. I was going to post the second half immediately, and then I didn't. So I went, well, at what point do I just wait till we catch up?
Well, it's not till the 50s, so we've got a ways to go. I would say it's probably going to be at least 2 years before we even get close to that, but we'll see.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
All right, we'll take care.
I'm way off. Yeah. You take care as well.
All right, we'll see you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sandy, Daniel, Ron, E. Olson. Is there anybody else I'm forgetting in the chat? For your time and attention. They are always wanted. Your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted and welcome. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone, take care.
Robot from books, tales of old. We dive deep, cross the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants. Engage with robot ladies, take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants. Engage with robot ladies, take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance.